Welcome to the HerbWorks podcast featuring Roger Drummer, the formulator at herbworks.com. An educator in the field of nutrition and Chinese herbalism, Roger has a unique ability to keep things simple by taking all the guesswork out of complicated health issues. HerbWorks is committed to helping you improve your health and enhance your life through herbs and common sense.
Welcome to another HerbWorks podcast. I'm Laura Shakti.
And Roger Drummer.
Hey, everybody. Today we are talking about adaptogenic herbs in the news. Apparently, they've hit the big time because Roger and I recently discussed an article that came out in Time Health this February.
Time Magazine.
Time Magazine, yeah. February 2018. And we both had some opinions about it, you in particular, Mr. Drummer.
Well, I always have opinions, especially when they write about herbs.
I know you do. So I would actually like to do this by kind of reading some things here that I see in the article and getting your reaction and your opinion to those. All right. So let's start with this definition of adaptogenic herbs. Adaptogens, this is from the Time article. Adaptogens are non-toxic plants that are marketed as helping the body resist stressors of all kinds, whether physical, chemical, or biological. These herbs and roots have been used for centuries in Chinese and Ayurvedic healing traditions, but they're having a renaissance today. So, what part of that's true, according to you? You have a diploma in Chinese herbology.
I think all of that is true, and they are having a renaissance today, and it's because they perfectly fit our current lifestyle, which is overamped, overstressed, driving towards success all the time, and that is causing a vast majority of health issues worldwide. In fact, even Western medicine says that stress is the cause of 90% of all illness, or 90% of all doctor's visits. And so, yes, adaptogenic herbs are having a renaissance because they actually deal with stressful conditions.
All right, so let me ask you, how many years, again, have you worked with the Chinese herbs?
Since 1990.
So it's been a while.
It's been a while.
And as this article says, this article in Time, Chinese adaptogenic herbs have been used for centuries in both Chinese and Ayurvedic healing traditions. However, what's funny is that what comes next in the next paragraph is that the writer, I guess this is Jamie Ducharme, forgive me if I have pronounced that wrong, Jamie, says proponents believe more research is needed. Well, so centuries of using it's not enough.
You could say that about anything. But the reality is, what you find with all these articles is that they always want to find an expert. And what do they do when they find an expert? They want to find a doctor, right?
And doctors are not necessarily trained.
And doctors don't use herbs, and they don't really utilize substances like that.
That's a really good point.
Now, this person at the Cleveland Clinic probably has a background in herbology, has at least worked with those types of things, so it's a little bit different. But she's still in a medical institution, and the overall feeling all the time is that we need more research, which always drives me nuts because, I mean, they've been used for centuries. There's an incredible amount of information on herbs, but it's generally coming from a society or a country that has an herbal tradition, and medicine doesn't pay attention to herbal tradition.
So what they mean when they say more research is needed, they're talking about scientific double-blind studies that
they're talking about more Western medical research, which isn't applicable to herbs, basically.
Why not?
Well, who's going to take, let's say, rhodiola and put it in a double-blind study for a disease to find out what's actually going on, and then not be able to own the rights to rhodiola? Because rhodiola is an herb that anybody in the world can sell.
Right. So there is a difference in medical research that is looking to isolate a property of a substance and be able to replicate that property, own a patent, and sell it.
So here's my other issue with more research needed. If you get on PubMed, if you're not familiar with PubMed, PubMed is the website that the U.S. government puts up, and it's research from the National Institute of Health, and it's all government-funded research. And if you Google ashwagandha, ashwagandha is an amazing herb It's one of the main adaptogens I use in all my products. But ashwagandha is often considered to be Indian ginseng, meaning that it's an adaptogenic herb, it's been used for centuries in Ayurvedic medicine. If you Google that on PubMed, you'll come up with over 900 research papers, right? If you Google rhodiola, which is an herb that comes from Tibet or northern areas of Russia, right? You'll find over 700 research papers published on rhodiola. You'll find over 500 on eleuthero ginseng. So more research needed? Well, you can say that about anything. But the reality is you're not going to find very many drugs in the world that have 900 research papers published on it. It's just not going to happen. It's basically all the research comes from the company that makes it.
Again, so it's your point of view. If you're in the medical field and you're saying we don't have enough medical research on these substances, but we also know in the general public that medical research usually happens because someone with money has funded it for a specific purpose, meaning they're going to make money out of it.
I use a type of ashwagandha in my products called KSM 66, and that particular ashwagandha has a lot of clinical trials backing it up for different aspects, lowering stress hormone, increasing energy, having an effect on mitochondrial energy, raising testosterone. All these different things have been proven out in trials, and they can make claims for it, what they call structure and function claims. So there's a lot of research done on these particular herbs.
Okay. So also in the article, it states that, and I'm quoting from this, while there's plenty of research to suggest that what you eat affects your health, from reducing inflammation to helping you sleep better, it's too soon to tell whether adaptogens can have such a direct and significant effect on the body. And I see in your notes here you've written, obviously never used them. So perhaps you have a strong opinion about that.
Really, my whole life is based on adaptogenic herbs, and I'm not doing that because I think it's something to sell. I'm doing it because I have given it to so many people that have had amazing results. And the great thing about adaptogens is that if it's formulated right, you generally don't have to wait more than 1 or 2 doses for someone to notice there's a difference in their system. Right. And why is that? Because the first thing that a good adaptogenic formula does is that it calms your stress response, which has a calming effect on your entire sympathetic nervous system, and you get back to a more balanced state between parasympathetic and sympathetic, meaning that you're more present, you're more aware, and you're in a balanced state.
So you would disagree that it's too soon to tell whether adaptogens can have such a direct and significant effect on the body?
Oh, I would only disagree with that 100%.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
okay.
So
golly, maybe we can find Jamie Ducharme and he can interview you for this article.
That's the main problem.
That's the main problem. He didn't talk to you. But that being said, it is something that, as you said, when people interview others, they do look for that expert in the field, which oftentimes isn't always the best expert to talk to.
No, they're always looking for MDs because I doubt if the person writing the article knew anything about herbs other than that they were popular and they needed to write an artiol.
Well,
I will admit there's a lot of great general information in it, and it's always good when you get some information out about herbs, right? That educates people that there's some things out there that can have a great effect on your health.
Okay, so going forward in here, I love reading your little notes here on this article. I think we're going to have fun with this one. All right, so this is talking about Siberian ginseng, right? And of course, people that have ever heard of Siberian ginseng know that it is used to boost the immune system. And in this article, it's talking about sexual health. Also, it says here that rhodiola is believed to improve energy, physical performance, and memory. And schizandra is thought to improve liver function and gastrointestinal problems. And then it says, a big caveat, there's very little human research to back up those claims. And I see your little notes here say, only thousands of years of use.
Well, there's also plenty of clinical research done in China but no one in Western medicine recognizes that. This is
so
something
again, this is another big problem.
This can go back to the, in my opinion, a little bit of arrogance in Western medicine where they don't recognize research from other countries or other cultures. And so you look at Eleuthero, it is true what they said. Eleuthero is an adaptogen, right? But all adaptogens have a slightly different effect in the body. I personally find Eleuthero to be a great herb for kidney adrenal energy. It tends to have a milder effect on regulating stress response, but it is amazing for being almost like a food to rebuild your adrenals. So when you mix it with the other adaptogens, it fulfills that whole body function. I think it's a great herb, and it's, it's funny thing about Eleuthero ginseng. It's often called Eleuthero. They're trying to get away from Siberian ginseng. Ginseng was put on it because of the fact that it reacts the way that good ginseng does in the body as an adaptogen, but it's not related as a plant. It's a very large bush with a woody root, whereas a ginseng is just a single root herb.
So, Roger, tell me about the other herbs mentioned in that part of the article, schizandra and rhodiola.
Well, rhodiola is probably the most heavily researched herb because that was an herb that was out of Russia, and Russia did an incredible amount of research on rhodiola. In fact, they probably have 40, 50 years worth of research on it. Same way with Eleuthero. Eleuthero was out of Russia and where all the research was done on it. It was the original adaptogen that was studied by the Russians. Rhodiola, famous herb, they really didn't release their information on rhodiola until the last decade or so because they used it as a secret ingredient for their astronauts and for
That's fascinating.
Their Olympic athletes because it increased endurance, oxygenated the blood.
Now, when you say they used it secretly, why?
Because they were in competition with the United States.
They didn't want other people to know how they were benefiting from it.
Yeah, if you're under 30, you probably don't realize that basically the Russians and the Americans have been at war in the space program and the Olympics forever. They just trying to beat each other. Trying to beat each other all the time. And one of the things they recognized in the space program was that some of our astronauts realized after the Russians came back from a long voyage in space, they walked out of their capsule and they looked normal. And none of our astronauts could do that.
None of our American ones.
None of the Americans could do that, and they didn't know what was actually going on. But here they were taking certain herbs that helped their body adjust to the stressors of space, and they were able to come back in a much better state of health. You probably don't realize I'm in my 60s, but back when we first started doing space travel, I do remember as a kid remembering that when the astronauts came back, they almost always went to the hospital for 10 days because they were just wasted. They couldn't do anything. And so their body just never adjusted to that, that lack of gravity and the everything that they're changed within their system because they're up in space.
That's interesting.
It didn't happen to the cosmonauts.
The cosmonauts.
They had an entirely different response to it. It's because of the herbs. In fact, this is fascinating. I love this because I'm an herbalist, right? Schizandra and rhodiola, and I think Eleuthero ginseng were the first three herbs in space.
The first three herbs in space.
In fact,
that would have been a very interesting addition to this article.
There's a Russian who holds the world record for the amount of time in space. I think it's around 470 days. I probably should have looked that up, but I didn't. But I think it's 470 days. And they were taking a combination of those herbs the entire time.
Wow.
And he came back, was in extraordinary health for someone who had been up in space for that long.
Wow, that must not be well known because,
it's not a well-known fact,
that's really
but, they were up in space. So rhodiola has an incredible amount of research. I find it to be a fascinating, unbelievable herb as an antioxidant, cleanses your liver, immediately hits your pituitary gland and starts to regulate your stress response. It's looked at in traditional Tibetan medicine as a fertility herb, how it builds up your entire system. And they often give rhodiola out at weddings as
really?
as a symbol of fertility and longevity. It's used. It's just a tremendous herb. I think it's
unlike
so
you,
fascinating.
who wanted to give out Twinkies at our wedding as a joke.
No, well, that was a joke.
That was a joke.
But rhodiola, that came into, kind of came into being in the United States in the mid 90s, late 90s. It just wasn't around. Nobody knew anything about it. Rhodiola was the herb that taught me the lesson that got me into adaptogenic herbs, because I had made a formula with it without even understanding it that much. Made a formula with it. It ended up in the hands of a friend who gave it to a friend with chronic fatigue who had been to 6 different herbalists in town.
Is this the vacuum guy?
Yeah, nobody figured out what was wrong with him. 3 days later, he's up at 8 o'clock in the morning cleaning the house because his energy came back. What happened? His nervous system shut down, his stress response shut off, and while he slept, his energy started to come back. And that's what kind of led me. I was already knowing that stress was the root cause of most things, because whenever I put anybody on a program that dealt with stress, they were always better. They always got rid of half of their problems the next time they came back to see me. And it was because they weren't stressed out.
Now, the article also mentions adaptogens for immune health, reishi.
But let me go back and finish about schizandra.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Because I don't want to skip that, because it's one of my favorite herbs.
One of your favorite herbs? You have like 10 million favorite herbs, Mr. Drummer.
I only have like 8 or 9.
Only 8 or 9.
But schizandra was one I had a lot of personal experience with when I became an herbalist. And, I had chronic fatigue when I became an herbalist. And schizandra, which is a berry, Wu-Wei Zi is the name of it.
We'll hope that you didn't mangle that Chinese pronunciation.
I did the first time, but Wu-Wei Zi is how you pronounce it.
Okay.
It means 5 flavor. It contains all 5 flavors to it, but it's an astringent, so it's an herb that's added to other formulas so that the body holds on to more energy from the formula.
You are schizandra crazy. You always use this in everything.
And so in that article, they mentioned, that it's good for your digestion and your liver.
I think they said may help mediate fight or flight stress responses.
Well, that's because it's a mild adaptogen. As far as an adaptogen, it is mild, but it has a much stronger brain clearing effect. And it's also been used in a clinical trial successfully to treat hepatitis in China.
Really?
By itself, right? So
I guess they didn't know about that when they wrote this article
either. They didn't hear
about
that one either, So, but it's also considered to be a lung tonic and a liver tonic. And what that means is that it increases your lungs' ability to make energy out of the air you breathe. And it also helps your liver move your liver and process energy. So it's a very potent antioxidant. It's used in every beauty formula out of China because of its astringent quality of holding or balancing the amount of moisture content in your cells. It has a long-term effect on building sexual energy. It's just an amazing herb.
Is it in Tianqi?
It is in Tianqi.
Okay.
It's an inner piece. It's an adaptogen I use in almost every formula I make.
Yeah. Well, I know because people that take the formulas that have schizandra in them often notice a difference in their skin.
Now here's a difference in having experience as opposed to waiting for a clinical study. Because there are studies that show that schizandra helps protect your skin from ultraviolet light, right? Nobody pays much attention to those because they're probably not done in the United States, right? I had a client, though, in Venice, California when I was there, who was a typical redhead, pure white skin who couldn't go out in the sun.
Okay.
And her big thing every year, she wanted to participate in the AIDS walk. She wanted to walk that 2-mile strip of the beach where they did a parade to bring awareness.
Yeah, I remember.
Bring awareness. So she couldn't do it without wearing a full jacket, coat, trench coat, and hat because she would just basically burn up. And we told her...
This was obviously before advances in, rash guard and sun solution clothing.
But she took schizandra, and we put her on that, and she was on it for a few weeks, and she went out and was actually able to do the walk without getting a burn. She was still slightly covered up. Her problem was she'd even get burns on her face with a large hat and the reflection and all that.
Oh, yeah, I'm
She
familiar.
was so sensitive to the sun, but she was able to actually do that without having a reaction to it. So, that's personal experience with it doing something.
Right. Yeah. I would say in my personal experience, I mean, I've been an ocean swimmer and I swim outside several times a week here. And I should have a lot more sun damage than what I have on my face, given how much time I've spent in the sun.
Yeah. No, schizandra is an amazing herb. Again, though, it is mild, in my opinion, compared to ashwagandha, rhodiola, and reishi for regulating the stress response. But it's a mild adaptogen with other benefits those herbs don't have, and it actually helps the body hold on to the energy in a formula, but it also has a very clearing effect on the mind. I think personally that it has some sort of an effect on the cerebral spinal fluid and how it flushes the brain.
Which herb is this?
Schizandra.
Schizandra.
Yeah, it has a very clearing effect immediately on the brain. So, amazing herb.
Now, I know you love your reishi. So do you want to respond to what it says here? Adaptogens for immune health. Very simple. There's one sentence in the article here. Reishi and ginseng have been found in some small studies to boost immunity.
Well, most of the research done on reishi is about boosting immune system function. It's not really considered to be an herb that you take to stimulate or boost immune function. It's used to regulate it. Reishi was the herb that introduced the world to the concept of immune regulation, meaning it gave your body something that would either boost your immune system or lower it if it was having an overreaction. This is why reishi mushroom, if you took it by itself and you wanted to take an immune system tonic and you had an autoimmune condition, meaning your body is over-attacking or overreacting, if you wanted to take one herb that might make an influence on that, you'd take reishi mushroom by itself.
Really?
Because it has this ability of regulating immune response. Which is another broad-based example of how adaptogens work in general. They regulate things. They help strengthen your body so that your body has a proper response to things and doesn't get worn out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. So in using adaptogens, the article tries to address that by saying that how can you use adaptogens in your diet more often? And it mentions sipping adaptogen teas, combining tinctures and water. Those are really different than the way you have found using them as extracts works in the body, yes?
Well, a tincture might be an extract, but I'd have to know the company to see whether I'd want to do it that way. But as far as tea bags, I don't know any adaptogens you can get anything out of it in a tea bag. You might, this is a big thing.
It's like the cinnamon problem.
Here I am. I'm dating myself once more. Back in the early 90s.
By the way, I'm younger than him.
Back in the early 90s when reishi hit the market, the place where I worked was the place that started to introduce America to reishi mushroom, right? Most reishi mushroom, when it came and started to become popular, was companies that didn't know anything about herbs, and they would grind the reishi up into a powder and stick it into a capsule. Well, reishi is a piece of wood. When the mushroom itself dries, it's called a woody mushroom. You could pick one up and beat it on the table. It sounds like a hammer you're hammering the table with, right? You cannot digest it. Doesn't matter how finely you grind the powder up. So unless you're feeding those capsules to your termites, nobody's going to get anything out of them, right? So basically,
but they're happy termites.
But that's what most people sold, right? Which gives herbs a bad name because now you're not getting anything out of it. Well, we were the ones that
So what you get out of it has to do with how the herb itself has been prepared.
Processed. So if you put that in a tea bag, you're not going to get anything other than some bad tasting tea. So you have to extract reishi. And normally an extraction of reishi to be an extract that's as close to nature as it's supposed to be, it takes 12 pounds of reishi to get 1 pound of extract powder.
That's a lot.
Because it's a dry, hard mushroom, right? And so in that form, now your body utilizes it and you can have an amazing effect from it. Now you can grind those mushrooms up and do an alcohol extract. But again, you'd have to know what company's doing that to know whether it's strong enough or done right so that you can actually get some benefit out of it.
Right. So like anything, how you use a substance is how it affects your health, right?
Is how it affects you.
Right.
The state that it comes in and whether it's been made properly.
Right. So I know you're going to have something to say about this. There is a sentence here saying supplements in general are also notoriously underregulated and in many cases dubiously effective and potentially dangerous. Again, this is from the Time article published on adaptogenic herbs in February 2018.
Well, I would hate to throw adaptogenic herbs into all those categories they talked about. And as far as regulation, I'm sorry. I manufacture things. They have so many dang regulations. It's
You're up to your ears in regulations.
And a lot of the regulations are to get small businesses out of business.
Really?
Yeah, because the regulations are set up as steps in the process of making something so that it creates an incredible amount of paperwork, and then you have to pay an expense. Every ingredient that's actually in a product that you see out on the market has been sent to a lab, and it's been certified to have that ingredient in it. So if you think you're buying something that may not be on the label, that has been sent to a lab, and some lab has checked off that they've tested it and it is what it's supposed to be or what it's claimed to be on the label. Now, you can still be buying really poor quality of something. They're just testing it to make sure it has the level of quality of the paperwork you turned in with it. And this makes all the difference with herbs and why I only use the herb source that I use, because I trust them and they're made to natural extracts, right? They're not over-extracted, they're not under-extracted. I know what goes into it. But there are a lot of products on the market that I would say are weak and they're not worth having. But is that any different than any other market in the world?
There's a great variation, is what you're saying, in quality of product.
There's a variation, but as far as being under-regulated, they're tested. It's just the person making it has decided to make a weaker product.
That is a really big point, because even in teas that you take in a tea bag, right? You can have a cup of green tea that has amazing flavor, is absolutely wonderful, and you feel quite a lot of effect from. You can also have a really bad cup of green tea. They're both green tea.
They're both green tea.
But it's the quality of herb, and tea is an herb, right? It's the quality that goes into it that makes a difference in the effect.
I have to buy a lot of ingredients for my products. There's certain ingredients that I can just get on a website and find the cheapest form of it and pay $20 for a kilo, right? I can buy the good stuff and pay $160 a kilo for it. That's a huge difference in the end cost of a product, right? But most companies, because they're not herbalists and they don't care, they just go to a show or something and they see, well, they've got it for $20, they've got it for $160. Well, I'm going to buy the one for $20. There's no difference. They don't know the difference.
Right. So it's not quite true. What they're saying is that it's notoriously underregulated. It really has to do more with what the formulator is actually purchasing.
It has more to do with the ethics of the company.
The ethics of the company.
What is the company's purpose? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to sell something? Are they trying to help people?
Right.
It all comes down to that with everything. It is not.
And I know where you stand on that.
That's just not something that happens in the herb industry or the nutrition industry. It happens in the auto industry. It happens everywhere, right?
Right.
But I personally take my products and I want to take the best stuff I can possibly take.
I know that's true because you're such an herb junkie. You want to take the best of what's there. I also have a quote here, which I think you are going to react to, possibly strongly. In the article, there is a quote from Dr. Powell, who is the co-medical director of the Center for Integrative and Lifestyle Medicine at Cleveland Clinic's Wellness Institute. Sounds like that's a great place. But Dr. Powell says a lot of supplement companies put small amounts of this and that in a pill. She says, I think they are just assuming or wishing for a synergistic effect. Now, you talk a lot about synergy, and I know you're not just assuming or wishing that you will get a synergistic effect out of your formulas. How do you accomplish that?
What she might be talking about, and by the way, that is an incredible institute at the Cleveland Clinic, and I'm sure they're doing amazing work. But what they're talking about is a problem in the industry.
How so?
Something that they call pixie dust.
Okay,
right?
Explain to me the pixie dust problem.
Pixie dust is when you put 20 herbs in a product, but really only have 2 in it, and you just put sprinklings in it because the names sound good. If you want to see pixie dust products, look at the energy drinks that are sold on the market in the grocery stores.
You mean the kind of thing you can walk into a 7-Eleven and pick up? Okay.
The energy drinks will always list ginkgo, ginseng, and something else.
Right.
Why? Because those are the names that everybody recognizes. It's not that there's any amount in there or quality of herb in that product that will do anything for you, right? In the overall picture of the formula, it's just that they know everybody's heard of ginseng, everybody's heard of ginkgo, they'll think that makes it good, right? So the pixie dust thing, what they're talking about is that a lot of times they'll put a lot of varying ingredients that have big names in something, but not enough of all of them to do something. I don't believe in that. I believe in giving an efficacious dose of something, meaning that if I'm going to make a product for this, I'm going to put the dose in it that was in a clinical trial to do this, right?
Because you're a professional herbalist and you take what you make.
I take
so
what
you
I
want
make.
it to work.
I want a lower stress hormone. I'm going to give you enough of a product that's been shown in a test somewhere that over 30 days it lowers stress hormone.
Okay. And what about this synergistic effect? How do you get that?
Well, the synergistic effect is what Chinese herbology is all about.
It's the alchemy of it, right?
That's the alchemy of herbalism, is that you don't just throw in a bunch of stuff that's all good for you. You throw in things that balance out the effects of all the other herbs. If you look at my formulas, I have the base, which is the what they call the king part of the herb, right? That's the adaptogens. The next segment of herbs, which are supporting that, are the tonics that are really good for your adrenals. Things that build qi and then consolidate energy in your adrenals so that when the adaptogens regulate your nervous system, the adrenals are relaxed and starting to soak up energy. You got to have some energy base there for them to soak up. And then you have the next herbs in it that support that a little bit by opening up your heart, which is good for stress, and by cooling off a little of the warmth of the energy. And all these different other aspects of the formula are taken care of because all the herbs are in amounts to support each other. Now that's a synergistic effect. That's really the basis of all Chinese herbology. They don't throw things together because they're all good for you. They all have a structured effect on certain systems in your body to allow you to come back into a state of balance and feel the best that you can possibly feel.
I can relate to what you're saying as far as how you find synergy with this alchemy. And most people probably can think of this also in relation to, a great chef knows what synergy is, right? A great chef is using a base and different layers to make whatever flavors they are melding together have an amazing outcome, right? In the same way in the perfume world. You don't just throw a bunch of things in equal measure and come up with an incredible scent. It happens because of the relationship of the ingredients that you've put in, as well as the quality of the ingredients that you have used.
It's all a relationship thing with herbs. It's how it all works. And all blends together.
So getting a really great synergistic formula has to do with experience and having expertise in that field. It's not a guessing game. Roger, tell me a little bit about Asian ginseng. I see that mentioned in the article as well.
Well, I underlined it because I think Asian ginseng is one of the most confusing herbs that anyone could ever actually talk about.
Confusing how?
In this article, they're talking about Asian ginseng being an adaptogen, and I don't believe that it actually is.
You don't believe that Asian ginseng is actually an adaptogen?
Not in the current state of Asian ginseng. And now let me explain that. Asian ginseng may be really good for your adrenals. Most of the stuff on the market is grown about 4 years. And at 4 years, it starts to build up its most stimulating quality to it so that it is a little bit of a stimulant for your adrenal energy.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you for one moment?
Sure.
By Asian ginseng, are they meaning that it's a ginseng that's grown in Asia, or that Asian ginseng is referring to the type of ginseng it is that can be grown other places.
Well, what they're referring to is grown in Asia, but they're referring to Panax ginseng.
Panax, okay. That
Mostly, everybody thinks of China, but it comes from China, Korea is the main places it comes from. But that type of root only is usually sold. Almost every product you will ever buy anywhere is Asian ginseng that's 4 years old. It has a stimulating quality to it. A root has to be at least 8 years old for it to start developing its next layer of chemicals, which are more the relaxing, balancing part of the root. Asian ginseng to be really good, if you can find 12-year-old roots and use those to make something, or you can find older roots. But the whole idea of ginseng being all the amazing attributes that they give ginseng were generally associated with the really old wild roots.
Again, the quality.
They don't exist that much anymore. It's been overpicked. It's really hard to find that quality of ginseng, and it's hard to pay for that quality of ginseng. You might go down to a really good store and spend $10,000 on a root that weighs less than an ounce.
And I'm going to hope that if I spent $10,000 on a ginseng root, I would get a much different effect from it than, say, paying a couple bucks at the 7-Eleven.
You would get a different effect, but here's the problem with it again, is that you would then only get probably the best effect if you sent it somewhere to be extracted, because ginseng's such a heavy, it's a root, it's bound up into all its active ingredients. It's a little hard to cook it down into a quart and drink it in 1 week, right? You'd want to have it extracted into something else. And if you do that, then you're looking at probably one of the 1 or 2 greatest herbal substances in the entire world, if you can get the quality that is wild and that it's aged and it transcends almost every other herbal substance.
You talk about this like you've had a personal experience with it.
I have many personal experiences with it. I used to make extracts with it in it and used to buy them and
with good quality ginseng,
really good,
like $10,000 roots. You're kidding me.
And
what's the most expensive or the wildest root ginseng that you've ever dealt with?
That I've ever purchased,
or that you've used or made an extract from it.
I think I paid $6,000 or $7,000 for a root that was 1/4 of an ounce, something like that.
Wow.
And
what did you do with that?
That was put into a gallon. That was put into a mixture of 10 pounds of other herbs, mostly ginseng, and then extracted out into alcohol so that it became 1 gallon, which then translated over into making 64 2-ounce bottles, which sold for $300 and some a piece, something like that. It was crazy.
Wow.
But that's how you get the maximum effect, because now you could put a half a little dropper under your tongue and leave it there for 2 minutes and have the entire energetic effect from it. So I love Asian ginseng. I love wild Chinese ginseng, wild American ginseng, but it's a whole different league of processing and utilization, and it's an entire different animal.
Wow. Okay. So, it's wonderful that this article came out on adaptogenic herbs, but as we're talking, there's so much that, I don't know if I would call it misinformation, but maybe it's just not researched enough to have a more thorough description and analysis of how they are used and by whom they are used. So do adaptogens have side effects?
I personally haven't seen a lot of side effects with adaptogens. I would say the worst one is that you might fall asleep because you took too much. One of the things that happens...
Fall asleep? Why would that happen?
Well, one of the things that happens with adaptogens, and it's not a bad thing, is that a person might take them and just get so relaxed they want to take a nap. But that usually only happens to someone who's so stressed out and has been pushing themselves for so long that their body knows it has its own intelligence, that it knows it has to shut down to be able to tone up your nervous system, be able to go into a phase of regeneration and kind of just regrouping your whole system. So sometimes people will fall asleep. But I haven't really seen side effects with with adaptogenic herbs, other than that some people get more relaxed than they want.
But they wouldn't fall asleep after taking an energy formula of adaptogenic herbs.
Just depends on the person, their state of energy. I wouldn't think that it would fall asleep taking an energy formula, but just an adaptogenic blend in a cap could make someone really relaxed and want them to take a nap.
Depending on what it was formulated for.
Right. And so it just depends on the person and the dose and how stressed out they are.
I think the stress level there is probably really the key, because I know in teaching yoga that many times the first time someone deeply relaxes, they have a shavasana, they're relaxed, they will recognize that relaxed feeling as probably saying, oh, I feel tired now. But what they're really feeling is maybe the first time they haven't felt keyed up. And so that's the perspective of what they put it into.
They're not feeling amped anymore.
They're not feeling amped, exactly. So they relate that differently. Well, how fun that adaptogens are back in the news, or in the news in this big way. Really neat to see this article in Time about adaptogenic herbs. I only wish they had interviewed you.
Wow, I thought of that too.
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone, for this HerbWorks podcast. This is Laura Shakti.
And Roger Drummer. Thanks for tuning in. And if you want more information, go to herbworks.com.